world seems harsh for an entrepreneur just starting out, with many difficult tasks like finding investors, gathering funds, nurturing a team, and building a product. Founders often are found overwhelmed and directionless. To relieve this tension, we at Goodfirms conducted interviews with successful IT companies and discussed trending topics as well as their impact on the IT industry. So, without any further ado, let's dive into the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Goodfirms Leaders Roundtable podcast. I'm Suhana Bhattacharya, Marketing Head at Goodfirms, and today we are in conversation with Tanuj Soni. With 7 years in the information technology industry and 4+ years as a technical architect, Tanuj is guiding multiple companies from the technical forefront, and one of them is Deqode Solutions. Deqode is a solution provider that transcends the boundaries of traditional information technology companies and decodes business problems with quality solutions quickly delivered. So thank you so much, Tanuj, for joining in today. And before we proceed further, I just wanted to ask if there's anything that you would like to add to your introduction or to the company.
Thank you, Sohana, for this great introduction and about the Deqode. So one thing I would like to add here is that Deqode itself also has innovations division that is called Deqode Labs, and we primarily focus on building things on top of blockchain. And we have been doing this since early 2016, and a pretty extensive team that we have. We have built a lot of cool products in past, like a blockchain itself, and then recently we have also released a product called simply nft.store, and it is pretty successful one. I would be telling more about it later.
Definitely. And when you mentioned that Deqode is a company that specializes in the blockchain and it deals with a lot of blockchain projects, so that is why we took up a topic that I personally myself didn't have a vast knowledge about, which is the decentralized application or Dapps, because they are in increasing demand because of the benefits like they offer, like transparency, flexibility, reliability, and more. So to begin with, our audience will be very curious to know what decentralized apps are as we refer them and what makes them unique.
Definitely. So a good way to understand the difference between an app and a DApp is to compare both of them in such a manner. So the current applications that we use, like Facebook, Instagram, or any other application that you use on daily basis, they are 2.0. So Web 2.0, what that means is that the applications that you interact with, they have servers on their part, and those servers are controlled by the owners of those applications. For example, Meta is the owner of Instagram and even WhatsApp and Facebook. Now they control all of the data that we have. So the major difference between an app and a DApp is that DApp does not have servers in the backend. So the information is not stored on central servers like Facebook or Instagram does. Instead, dApps directly interact with the blockchain and stores the information and data in decentralized storage services like IPFS and metadata in blockchain. So a big difference is that data generated on dApps is not stored in central servers. Instead, it goes to decentralized network. So the autonomy of the data and the ownership of the data is not controlled by just a single entity.
Okay, so this is a very good explanation of what is the basic difference between DApp and apps. But what differentiate these two based on their utility and functionality? Because during researching, we also read that when people buy NFTs, they get some utilities with it. Some concert tickets if they are buying an NFT that is related to any artist, or the access sort of. So what differentiate these two based on their utility and functionality?
So in terms of utility, I would say the biggest difference between two is that as I mentioned earlier, the authority of the data. And then if I purchase an NFT, and I have it recorded on the blockchain, I can prove the ownership of it. Whereas if I own an asset on Web 2.0, maybe just I just bought a skin in the game, you cannot publicly let others verify that information. So the biggest utility that comes on top of is you can prove your ownership, and that cannot be controlled or censored by any third party. So for example, if you have some sort of content on YouTube algorithms can delete your content, censor your content, and do whatever they want to do. Whereas dApps, no one has control over the data and ownership. So that's one of the biggest utility, and that's where NFT comes into the picture. Like if I hold a digital asset and it is recorded on the chain, it cannot be controlled by anyone. It cannot be attached to any litigation or can be controlled by any central authority, government, or anything. So this is the major difference and the biggest utility I would say that apps has.
Okay. So what basically you're saying is the biggest utility that dApps can provide is that you are in control of your data, right?
Yes, users are in control of their own data and no one can take that away from them.
We all know that the world is talking about Web3 and it's a massive platform for decentralized applications. So, what can a typical user expect from a decentralized application that is based on Web3, and what changes does it bring to the user's life?
Definitely. So Web3, as I mentioned, has its own governance system that you can think about when a dApp is deployed or first released. It has its own bylaws that are hard coded into the smart contracts and the decentralized protocols. So any big decision that needs to be taken in that particular, it is done through a process where the decision making is done by the entire community, not just the single owner of the dApp. And so in centralized apps, only some people or entities control and run the operations of the app. This is not true for Web3. This is and one of the biggest example of bringing changes into users' life is that we already know the Ukraine crisis, and when banking system was not working in Ukraine, cryptocurrency and dApp played an very important role in funding donations and transfers of the money. And everyone was able to donate, and they can also remain anonymous, and there is no single entity that can take that money out in middle. So this is, I would say, one of the biggest examples of dApps bringing changes to lives.
Okay. So it surely means that when there's an involvement of decentralized application, who is actually responsible for the security of the users and the money involved in decentralized application? Suppose if I have a company and it is
Mhm.
running a decentralized application and it is based on something which involves money or has money stored in there. So if something shuts off tomorrow, who is responsible for users' security or the money that they have put in?
So that's a very good question. So the thing is that recently we have seen a lot of dApps going down where people's money was involved and the company which holds the users fund itself got up and sometimes got hacked, and they traded on behalf of users, and that has been the place where things has gone the wrong way, because the money was not entirely controlled by a dApp. It was a pseudo dApp. Like there are bigger applications, like there was this Luna crash where it wiped out almost 35 billion worth of users investments. And then there are companies like Voyager and Celsius. They had billions of dollars worth of cryptocurrencies from users, and they were managing the cryptocurrencies fund like hedge funds, and they got it wrong, and they were not able to anticipate the risks involved, and that's where people lost money. But here the question is, like, if the dApp is truly decentralized, it will never move the entire fund of users to a particular entity. That's the first principle, that the money would be managed and maintained by the contracts and the blockchain itself, not by the people.
Hmm.
And another example is that, taking into example of Ukraine, like who in the end gets the money and how do they secure it and make sure that the funds are utilized properly. So the public addresses on which the donations were received were managed by few of the people from the government. Like there is chance where those people can make it worse and they can maybe make a mistake and lose all the funds, but that's where the multi-sig wallets and the PC wallets comes into picture. So the donations does not directly lead to a single wallet. Instead, those are funds are stored in multi-sig wallets, and those multi-sig wallets are controlled by a group of people, say 10 or 15 people, and it has a threshold. 10 out of 15 members need to approve to withdraw any fund. So that way, governments or private institutions or agencies could manage the funds by themselves using multi-sig wallets, and
Yeah.
MPC is also a similar technology to use.
Okay. And like as blockchain is getting more popular, so fintech and gaming are the topmost industries which are using blockchain in various other things that they are making. So what other industries can we expect to see rapid blockchain adoption?
Definitely. So fintech is the first thing that came out of blockchain, like decentralized exchanges and then cryptocurrencies and a lot of things. But the current emergence of decentralized autonomous organizations, it has opened the doors for a lot of things. So so basically we can see the use cases in healthcare, governance, supply chain, I would say even insurance, transportation, cloud storage, real estate. And it is much more easier to port applications to blockchain which already has data that is public. For example, real estate. So all of the land registries and all of the things are already public. A lot of data is public, and that can also be put on top of a decentralized network and can be publicly verifiable and tamper proof. So a lot of scope, since blockchain and Web3 are the foundational technologies, it may take a lot of time for these industries to be able to adapt blockchain, but sooner or later this is going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, because people all over the world are slowly accepting it and taking it more into
Yeah.
consideration. So you just mentioned about DAO, which is the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So can you please explain in detail about it? Because if listeners are not aware of it, they may be able to get more insights about this.
Definitely. So I will again compare it with centralized organization to be able to better understand what a DAO is. So
Okay.
for anyone to start any organization, institution, what they do is they register their firms like private limited or maybe LLPs or whatever, and then these has some directors and board members who make all of the decisions. They approve or reject the decisions, and all of the strategic movements that needs to happen comes through the directors of this centralized organization. Now a decentralized autonomous organization is where it is formed on top of blockchain. It has no one to control it. So now the question here is how and when the decisions are made. If it is not controlled by anyone, how any strategic movement or decision is made. So to do that, what happens is that all of the participants of this DAO, which is deployed on blockchain, which represents an entity, is that every participant of a DAO, there could be 1,000, 10,000, or maybe millions of participants in a DAO, and they hold the equal value and equal voting power. So what voting power here is that, so any decision that needs to be made in the DAO, someone has to propose the change. And then there could be a threshold that more than 50% participants of a DAO will have to vote for this. Or maybe they can also reject proposals. So a typical example in normal private limited or LLPs is that directors would bring in, propose the change, and they can also approve it. But within a DAO, anyone can propose a change, and then the decision is collectively made by all of the participants of a DAO. And these DAO The good example of a DAO is that, so for example, there are very high value NFTs available like CryptoPunks or Bored Ape Yacht Club. Now, those are single NFT is worth millions of dollars. Now, there could be a case where I can form DAO on the blockchain, and then I can propose that I need to purchase a particular NFT, and I would be contributing just USD 100, and the remaining fund can be raised inside the DAO. No central entity controls, and I would say whoever contributes to the DAO would get specific voting power. And the purpose of this DAO is to buy that particular NFT, and then all of the users who deposited funds in this DAO would have voting power. They becomes the director, I would say. And then within this DAO, I can propose a change to buy that NFT. The DAO would automatically buy the NFT, and the ownership would remain to the DAO. So basically, we fractionalized a particular NFT, and now there are multiple owners. Single DAO can
Okay.
act as an entity, decentral entity on the blockchain, controlled by all of its participants.
Okay. Okay. So blockchain technology is definitely taking all over the world, but in comparison to a traditional app, what are the real world complexity involved in developing an app of that sort? Because it's not easy to develop a decentralized application, right?
Oh, that's true. Building decentralized apps is way more difficult. And I would say the biggest complexity here is that since it's not completely adopted in major mainstream browsers, the complexity of someone installing a wallet like MetaMask and then connecting with a DApp and then utilizing it, it has a lot of related hurdles. Like current audience, they understand how web 2 work. They know username and passwords, and they are able to uh, text or utilize the application, upload the data, download the data. But in a decentralized app, the thing is that they will have to sign a few transactions, then the transactions get submitted to the blockchain network, and then that gets committed, and this brings in a little bit of delay in user feedbacks. Like when on the web 2 you just press a button and you get the response and you can see the results, but on the dApp side there is this hurdle where they don't know what is happening in the background, why this MetaMask is needed. So these complexities already make usability of dApps very hard. And in terms of development, I would say, since there are no servers and a lot of, I would say 95% of workforce and software know about these architecture where there are client and data is secured in the servers. But on the DApp part, the thing is that there are very few things on the server, and most of the things will go into the blockchain networks. Now, data stored on blockchain is not directly queryable. Like you can query database, you just fire a query, you get the response on the blockchain. The data needs to be stored in a particular manner, and then there that brings in limitations of how the data can be fetched. And then developers also needs to make sure what data they can make public, what data would require some sort of security in terms of privacy, and also regulations if they fall into a GDPR compliance or maybe HIPAA compliance. And if there is a request from user to delete that data, then they will have to make a trade-off, because if things go directly to the chain or blockchain network, it can never be deleted. So
True.
a lot of complexities in terms of development, thought process, and ideation, but still.
Right. And when we were researching about this topic and learning more about it, we also discovered that there are various layers of blockchain, like the blockchain 1.0 introduced in the era of cryptocurrency, and the blockchain 2.0 is set to be the emergence of business application. So, are we heading into new generation gadgets that could support blockchain based applications and services?
Definitely. So one thing I would say is that when in the era of blockchain 1, there were only cryptocurrencies. Exchanges, lending, borrowing, and a lot of stuff only happened through Web 2.0 centralized services. And that's where it became a bottleneck for users, because in the end they will need to have an account on an exchange, and then they will have to attach their bank account with the exchange, and then they would have to do KYC, and then a lot of hurdles, and then there are cross country issues as well. Now With the emergence of blockchain 2.0, we can see applications like PancakeSwap, Uniswap, Aave, all these dApps, they are complete dApps. They have contracts and they are not governed by central entity. And now the users are able to exchange their cryptos on convert them to or maybe stable coins like USDT, USDC, and purchase and exchange. They can do everything without even having a bank account. They would still need a wallet today. What but the applications when exchanges became decentral, and there are decentral dApps where you can maybe collateralize your digital assets like NFT and get a loan out of it. So we are seeing applications of another layer where there are lending and borrowing platforms available, completely decentralized, exchanges completely decentralized. So and the volumes of these just two exchanges, the decentralized exchanges, are more than $1 billion. So I would say the figure itself speaks about potential of dApps and blockchain 2.0. We are seeing such applications of another layer, and whatever the next stage would be exciting.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. The future of dApps really look promising. And while you even mentioned that Decode has been working on a lot of blockchain related projects, so can you please describe some intriguing dApps projects that Decode has worked on, and what challenges did you guys face while developing blockchain applications?
Definitely. So we have built a lot of different type of blockchain applications, even in healthcare, transportation, even in networks or like telecom networks. And one of the most useful as of now we have built is a product called Simply NFT. So what that is, it's a Web 3.2 version of Shopify. So just to make sure our listeners are able to understand, Shopify is a simple Web 2.0 platform where users can just go sign up, add their credit card and their company details, and they have a shop with their custom domain, and they can start selling anything they whatever they want to do. So now the same thing they can also do with Amazon, but Amazon does not let you use your own domain and then start putting your brand, like maybe shoes or maybe just bats or anything on the store, but your end customers would still be interacting with the Amazon. Shopify lets them create their own shop, own store with their own branding, own look and feel, everything. So now Simply NFT on the Web 3.0 does something similar. It lets users create their Web 3.0 store using a wallet, and they can immediately start selling the digital assets. So I would say it is just something we are working on to make transition users from 2.0 to 3.0, so they can now quickly build a store within few minutes and then start selling whatever they want on a Web 3.0 store, and they would not have to learn about any complexities attached. Now using a dApp itself is very complex, and building a store or a particular customer facing stuff is another level of complexity. So we have solved a lot of things user by providing a complete Web 2.0 look and feel and experience, and all the heavy lifting that needs to happen related to blockchain and the network is already taken care by this store builder that we have, that's named Simply NFT. It's a SaaS product that we have. So in terms of complexity building these, as I have mentioned, like there are a lot of things we need to make trade-offs. What things would be stored on the server, what things can be done on the blockchain part, what are data related stuff we can put on IPFS. So this decision making process and then trade-offs that we need to make and remain decentralized as well as comply with a lot of things, that decision making part is really hard, I would say.
Okay, we didn't know that Simply NFT that you just mentioned that can make store building on Web 3.0 so easy and fast. That's amazing.
Yep.
Okay. So, can you please provide a few pointers and takeaways on the blockchain future to the next generation of entrepreneurs? Because this is surely a market that is not going to fade away so easily.
Definitely, the numbers and the economy itself is really huge. It is not going anywhere. There are immense possibilities in the blockchain sector. It is just the starting point, and the biggest takeaway I can give them is to not focus on what blockchain is capable today. Like there is still this big part where privacy and this decentralization, they cannot exist together, and that is really hard as of now to do. And but things are growing at a very fast speed. Zk snarks and a lot of technology advancements are coming on regular basis. So what they should do is that they should focus on what blockchain on decentralized networks and then this cryptography and everything could have a potential, not judge anything based on the capabilities blockchain has today. Instead think in long run, and also in terms of the pace. Like we have blockchain 2.0 in just 5-6 years, uh, uh, second level of applications coming out. So if you think about layer 3, 4, 5, 6, there are immense possibilities, and things those are not possible today would be solved with the technological advancements.
Definitely. And like you mentioned, that blockchain is just the starting. And in fact, the era of decentralized app is just the starting. And since it's a very popular service offering, having a prominent marketplace in the industry is very necessary to bag clients of that sort. So, how has Goodfirms help Decode get good clients and work on bigger projects?
Definitely. What I would say, good firms, we have been on good firms. I don't know since when, but definitely anyone who needs to judge or do the due diligence, they trust good firms, and based on that, they can make their own judgment and fasten their cycle of doing the due diligence.
Okay, so thank you so much for giving in on valuable insights and you having so much of experience in the technical background. I'm sure a lot of new entrepreneurs or someone who's just starting out learn a lot about this Dapps concept from our conversation. So thank you so much, Tanuj, for joining in today.
Thank you, Sohana.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.